All right, joining us today on Pirate Radio Live, play-by-play voice for ECU football and a little bit of hoops, as it turns out as well. Jim Szoke joining us on the program. You know him from his work with the Carolina Panthers, of course, as well. Jim, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Clip. How you doing today?
Hey, doing great. Beautiful day in Greenville. Got some Pirate baseball going on and some Pirate hoops coming back to Minges Coliseum coming up this Sunday. And last week, Jim, I was on the way to Minges Coliseum. My daughter and I running a little late to get to the game and heard a familiar voice, but a different voice for basketball calling the game, and that was yourself. And Jim, I've said it. I've told you personally, but man, I thought you did a great job calling the game. Now, I will say, R.J. Felton helped out a little bit because
Yes, that was the show. Was RJ? Yeah.
the Pirates put on an offensive performance that allowed you to get excited. But once again, awesome call in the game, and man, that must have been a fun game to call on Sunday.
No, it was. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's always, as you know, it's like Rajay Harris breaking off an 80-yard touchdown run in the Military Bowl. So credit to the team first of all for creating what I thought was probably, I guess, the most exciting game. Darren would know better than I do since he's doing the bulk of the games. But it's like, to me, that was an exciting atmosphere. It was a close game from the start. Went to overtime. RJ was, especially in the first half, ridiculous. It was good to see the Pirates shoot the ball that well because I know there's been times this season where they've struggled with that. So you always want to win, but as an announcer and for the fans to see that level of scoring and hitting 3-pointers, making their free throws, playing good D when it was crunch time, it was kind of the perfect storm of having a great basketball game.
Jim, we know you from football, obviously not just with East Carolina, but with your work over the years with the Carolina Panthers. What's your,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, broadcast relationship with basketball? I know when we get in this business, we do a lot of different things. So, how much basketball have you called and covered over your career?
Quite a bit, and just to take it from a broadcast perspective, why I do ECU football in particular is I've fallen in love with the Pirates. Is I love play-by-play. So I've done color, I've done talk like you do, sports talk. I've done reporting, but I like calling games and doing play-by-play. So that's my favorite thing. Basketball-wise, before the Panthers ever arrived in town, I did the Charlotte 49ers basketball. I did 2 years of Davidson College basketball. The last couple of years, I've been doing Winthrop basketball. We've had a couple different people kind of sharing it like you guys do with baseball, but I've been doing Winthrop the last couple of years. And before the Hornets went to New Orleans, of course, I've been back for a while. I used to do quite a bit of the Hornets broadcast. I've done some major college basketball, getting the opportunities with Raycom and even a couple games on ABC back in the day on some regional games. So been doing basketball, played basketball in high school. So goes back 30, 35 years as far as loving basketball. And I love the pace of calling basketball. I love all the games. I've done baseball, I've done football and some others, but basketball is fun because I like the tempo and the pace of it. Thankfully, I've never had to do Virginia basketball when Tony Bennett was there. So, with the exception of a few places like that, just it's a great game to call.
Yeah, and you're right there on the court. You almost feel like you're in the action, being able to do some PA announcing. Like the first game I ever filled in for Morgan Ahlers at Minges, it was Joe Dooley right to my left, screaming Dan Hurley to my right, and then TV Teddy Valentine right in front of me. And I feel like I was in the game. Like you could hear everything they were saying. It's a different experience when you do basketball.
Well, we find out very quickly that Mike Schwartz is a high energy guy because we're right next to that bench, as you know. And when he stands up, I have to stand up or move to kind of he's blocking me out like he's going to get a rebound. So he's very active out there, as you can imagine, and a high energy guy. And so you think like he's right off the court, like you said. So I know he's sitting there at times when it gets quiet during a free throw, hearing every word I'm saying for those couple of seconds. Not that he's focused on what I'm hearing, but he can't help because I'm standing, 2 feet behind him. But it is great because, as you know, there's a lot of arenas where you're up in the rafters calling games. So it's like the Charlotte Spectrum Center where the Hornets are. That media is all up like halfway up in the arena. But I love that feeling of being right down on the floor.
And part of a great broadcast is playing off your partner, whether it's Kevin Monroe, Andrew Bays with East Carolina football. For years, it was the voice, Jeff Charles with Cy Seymour, just a great tag team. But what's it like calling it solo, Jim? You don't have somebody to work off of.
No, I find myself an annoying partner to work with because I get on my own nerves after a while hearing my own voice over and over again. But it's fun. You're right with football with Kevin and Andrew. We've quickly developed a great chemistry with them and with Maceo, obviously on the sidelines. And then for basketball, most of the basketball I've done in my life has been with a color commentator. But again, because of the pace, you can do it pretty easily, and there's not as much downtime as you might think, unlike baseball in particular, where there's a lot of time where you have to fill. So I almost struggle because you do this homework, you do these notes. I got my last game notes in front of me here. You kind of want to use your homework when you've done it, and you get home after a game and realize how many things you didn't really get to do. You might get them in the pregame or postgame a little bit, but the pace of it is such that while I would love to have a color commentator, it's quick enough where there's really not a ton of extra downtime to work in a whole lot of voices.
Jim, it's different being there live too, right? You get to see these guys up close and personal. I'm a big Jay Shane Woodard fan, and he got his hand on just about every ball, every possession on Sunday. He was a lot of fun to watch. Anything else kind of stand out to you like that maybe you haven't seen from the television side of things?
Well, and in that vein, I thought Trevi LeBeau had an outstanding game. I mean, all the way around. I mean, both him and Jay Shane were very efficient on the floor with the block shots stand out, the steals. I think they had 12 steals, the team, 12 or 13 steals in the game, which is a really high number. So just that defensive intensity of all that hustle stuff, the loose balls, the steals, the block shots, not giving up the extra possessions, all those things Coach preaches on. And I know you guys have talked about it all year. You've got the big three and the big two in particular, but when you get those extra, it doesn't have to be one guy. When you get those extra performances, Jan Farrell was really efficient, I thought, shooting the ball in this game. When you have that, that makes a big difference. And that, to me, like even Bailey coming in, hitting those two free throws in a game that went to overtime, just those 3 minutes he was on the floor, it made a big difference. He did some good things, again, that don't show up in the box score, as they say, kind of thing. So you feel the team chemistry, that this team plays hard. And eventually, even if the shots aren't going down, more games than not, that's going to pay off in the end with victories like that one.
I hate to say it, but there was a moment where I said, "Who is that going to the line?" And not until Morgan Ayler said Tybo Bailey did I realize, okay, that's the young Tybo in there. And you're right, hit some big free throws for the Pirates. East Carolina will take on Charlotte coming up. Boy, there was a Charlotte bugaboo for a while. 2 losses in basketball last year, couple of straight losses in football. We finally got them in hoops on the road earlier this season, and going for the Charlotte sweep coming up, Jim.
That would be great. I'm looking forward to calling that one too before Darren comes back from his baseball games that he's doing. But Charlotte, I see them here obviously closely. I think Aaron Fern's a great coach. First of all, they've been depleted in talent the past year and a half or so. They don't have the roster in general, so they're still dangerous. And as we know, that first game at halftime they had the lead against ECU. So they're playing better basketball now. They had a nice win over Temple in overtime a week or so ago. So they're going to be tough, but overall, just look at their overall roster, not quite as talented, but a great coach, and they play hard too. And we're down to that time of year where I think everybody with transfer portal and new recruits coming in, it takes a long time to adjust. And now we're to that point where I think teams have figured out their rotations, right? They figured out their rosters and who's going to play, and rotations do get really tight this time of year. So that's going to be a fun one. And it's almost like the conference knew from an ECU standpoint, like what this end run would look like, because then you've got, as you know, Tulane coming in and at FAU, the two teams you're chasing in the standings right now. Yeah. So it really couldn't set up any better than that.
Yeah, and looking forward to that AAC tournament. Memphis, obviously, the team to beat, but certainly beatable. Pirates had them right there on the ropes at the end of that game in Memphis earlier this year, so it should be a really fun tournament. Jim Szoke joining us. Jim, while I got you here, let's talk a little bit of football. And we saw the Panthers close out the season with some optimism, and Bryce Young played well the second half of the season. What are the main kind of bullet points or storylines to follow this offseason for Carolina? What are the main things that organization and the fans want to see get done?
Yeah, I think with last year, Dave Canales coming in as coach, as a quarterback, former kind of that position's coach, and then an offensive coordinator, quarterback whisperer, as I said, with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, that, they wanted to get the offense right, and they went right at the offensive line in free agency, bringing in Robert Hunt, bringing in Damian Lewis. So the offensive line was really good last year. That helped Bryce Young in the second half of the season become the quarterback he was, but also Chuba Hubbard running the ball. So I think that was key. And by no means is the offense a finished product, but the defense needs that kind of attention now. And it was good to hear Dan Morgan, the GM, talk at the Combine yesterday that he wants to attack the defensive line the way they attacked the offensive line this past offseason. So they'll get Derek Brown back, which is by far the biggest thing that could happen. But they got that 8th pick. They got the Rams' second-round pick. So I think, the defense in particular, and to even micromanage it, that defensive line in particular, it all begins right there. I think that's going to be the priority, the biggest point of emphasis. Of course, even with their improvement, they won 5 games last year, so you can kind of use help just about everywhere. But any 3 levels of defense, we saw Shaq Thompson won't be with the team again this year for the first time in 10 years, help in the defensive secondary. So all 3 levels need help, but especially on that defensive line.
Jim, speaking of man, college football and NFL almost mirroring each other now as far as off seasons go with the transactions and everything, and a lot of change in this East Carolina football program. Of course, the man at the top, Blake Harrell, back after serving an interim role, but he's got a lot of spots to fill and a lot of roster spots to fill in as well. So we'll be keeping up to that week to week, day to day, trying to figure out who's going to be on the field for ECU football, but got spring football right around the corner here.
Yeah, I remember we came out and Brian Bailey and I did that spring football show last year, and then whether their choice or the coaching staff kind of encouraging it, 5 players left after the spring game. So it just feels like I feel for these coaches, and now having a GM, obviously, it's a whole different, never-ending ball game of roster and just balancing that in addition to recruiting on top of that. But as we all know, that I think East Carolina did really as good as anybody, and it was really super happy to hear about John David Baker being back with that contract extension, that the jump the offense made. And obviously you got your quarterback now, you got your offensive coordinator, you got Blake in there as head coach. So you've got some carryover now where it's not like you're starting from scratch again this year.
Jim, you got a job to do no matter if the team you're calling is winning or losing, but we all know winning is way more fun. So pretty crazy I don't know if miserable is a good word, but rough start to the seasons for both the Panthers and the Pirates, and kind of the optimism that showed for both teams, right? The second half of the year kind of came out of the season looking forward to next season for both of the teams.
No, it's always a lot more fun to win, and it's got to be great to be the Kansas City Chiefs broadcaster, right? So
Right.
your worst scenario is you lose a Super Bowl usually. But for the rest of us, I know you're a Washington fan. I grew up in Cleveland, so you kind of earn your fan stripes, as we say, with the misery. As we say, you wouldn't know good if you didn't know bad by comparison. So I think you appreciate the good times even more when you have to deal with the bad times, because it does matter more, and you realize how difficult it can be to have a winning team at times, and especially to sustain winning for a number of years. So, yeah, both teams are trending up, the Pirates, the Panthers. I mean, I know baseball's struggling right now. They've had some good years, but on the other hand, basketball, the way things are trending right now, they could have a really exciting finish to this season here. And I'm sure baseball will figure it out at ECU, but they're always good. And it's good to see football back, and cannot wait for that opener at NC State to begin next season. Talk about a script being written there, too, to finish with that bowl game, and the way that got a little ruckus on the field at the end to open at Raleigh. Will be a lot of fun.
No doubt. Jim, Szoke joining us. Jim, have a great call this Sunday. East Carolina taking on Charlotte, another big one for the Pirates, and hopefully another good crowd, an even bigger crowd than we saw last Sunday. Jim will be on the call. Jim, thank you for joining us today. Great to talk sports with you, and we'll do it again down the road.
You bet, Clip. Anytime. Thank you.